guys, what's going on? I'm Dr. Danny and I recently graduated from medical school, so I have fresh information that I really want to share with you guys. This is my very first YouTube video and I decided to create this YouTube channel for you guys. For those of you who have ever wondered what is going on inside your body when you're sick and what to do about it, this is for you. So don't think twice about it, make sure you subscribe, like, and let's get right into the video. Today we're talking about migraines, focusing on three main things. We're going to talk about the what, where we'll see what is a migraine, what are the symptoms, who gets them, and what are the specific areas of the brain that are implicated in a very small level that lead to the perception of pain that we call migraines. Number two, we're going to talk about the why. Why do we get migraines and what triggers them? And lastly, number three, we're going to talk about the how. How do you treat them? How do you prevent them? And how you, my friend, right in front of the screen, can start implementing things today to avoid migraines moving forward. Migraines are just one of many different types of headaches. You see, you got trigeminal neuralgia, thunderclap headache, cluster headache, tension headache. But what's unique about migraines is that it's usually on one side of the head and the pain is throbbing. Okay, it's associated with nausea, light, and sound sensitivity. What's crazy is that it affects a ton of people. In fact, up to 15% of the population have migraines. That's 1 out of 7 people. It affects men and women and people of all ages, but the people that it mostly affects, adult women. Why? At least in part, we think it's because of the hormonal cycle. And I say in part because otherwise every woman would have migraines, and that's obviously not the case. But for those that have the genetic susceptibility and the triggers, here's what happens. The hormonal cycle, you could divide it into two. Estrogen rises in the first half and then it drops in the second half. And as estrogen rises, it's associated with a rise in serotonin and endorphins. And you've probably heard of these before. They're the feel-good neurotransmitters. And then as estrogen drops, there's a relative drop as well in serotonin and endorphins. But here's the thing, these two neurotransmitters are also implicated in the blocking of pain in the brain. Now you have less of that compound that is blocking the pain, and so that women in this phase are more susceptible to pain in the head. But then what happens to everyone else that gets migraines? To answer that, we're going to have to divide migraine into 4 phases. The prodrome, the aura, the migraine, and the postdrome. But don't worry, it's not difficult. I just wanted to keep in mind something real quick. Although this video isn't supposed to be an extensive review, you should have a pretty good idea of what a migraine is and what happens in the brain, just so that you understand why we get migraines and then why we give the treatments that we give. So let's talk about the prodrome, or we'll just call it the warning sign phase. Here, people normally know that they're going to get a migraine in the next couple of hours because of the symptoms that they get. Excessive yawning, food cravings, and mood changes. The mood changes can vary from irritability, sadness, and even euphoria. What's really interesting though is that people during this phase were put under functional MRI machines, and they found that 2 areas of the brain received more blood flow, the cerebral cortex and the hypothalamus. Now we'll talk about the cerebral cortex in a little bit, but right now let's focus on the hypothalamus. This is a really interesting structure of the brain because it's involved in the balance of the entire body, in regulation of body temperature, sleep, hunger, mood, and even growth and development. So this links the symptoms with the corresponding structure of the brain. Now, the hypothalamus is connected with other parts of the brain, but the cerebral cortex ends up getting hyperstimulated, which leads to the following phase, the aura. Auras are neurologic symptoms that are either positive or negative, that are focal and non-permanent. Let's break that down. What in the world is a neurologic symptom? It's an alteration in either the movements or the senses, involving sight, smell, taste, feel, and hearing. Positive would mean that you would add to any of these faculties, and negative that you would subtract. So let me give you an example. The most common aura in a migraine is a positive visual neurologic symptom. So imagine your visual field. A person with this aura would see halos or wave-like distortions or flashes of light, versus, let's say, a negative visual neurologic symptom, which would be a loss in the visual field. Another big aura is feeling numbness or feeling pain, or hearing ringing. One that is really scary is losing movements in a part of the body. Now, the fact that it's focal means that it involves one or some of these, but not all of them. And non-permanent means that it's not gonna last forever. So what's happening in the brain at this time? Remember that we had left off saying that the cerebral cortex was being hyperstimulated, right? The neurons are firing so much that it comes to a point where they cannot fire anymore. So the body says, hey, what's going on? Do you need more food, more nutrients, more oxygen? Well, let me help you out. I'm gonna send more blood over to you so that you get what you need. And so the cerebral cortex does get that additional blood flow, but at an expense, because it also increases inflammation to the area, which leads to the next phase, the actual migraine. Think of it this way, you have sensory input neurons on the surface of the brain, which is exactly where that inflammation is happening. So that information is carried through these input neurons into the trigeminal system, which then sends it to the thalamus, which relays it back to the cortex. This allows the conscious perception of pain, okay? That's cool. So now let's go into the last phase, which is now you have decreased blood flow all throughout the brain, and this manifests with exhaustion, neck stiffness, and difficulty concentrating. And that's it. That summarizes the 4 phases of the migraine. So now the question is, okay, but why do people get migraines? 2 reasons: genetic causes and environmental triggers. Think of it, if you have genes that upregulate any of the pathways that we just mentioned, then you could be at an increased risk of having migraines, unfortunately. For example, if you have genes that decrease the threshold by which you get the cortical spreading depression, or genes that increase the inflammation in the surface of the brain more than normal, or if you have nerve endings that are very sensitive to that inflammation, then you might be getting migraines. And then for environmental triggers, there are a lot, but the most common ones are stress, menstruation, sleep changes, fasting, weather changes, light flashes, strong smells, and the list just goes on and on and on. But if you notice, these are things that are practically normal. So how in the world do these trigger migraines, right? My guess would be because of an alteration of the hypothalamus. Remember, the hypothalamus is involved in homeostasis, the balance of the body. So if there's a genetic predisposition that makes the hypothalamus trigger or overreact because of a slight change in the environment, this could create the domino effect of the processes that we just mentioned previously that create the migraine. And then boom. Fortunately though, we're going to talk about the treatment that we give, as well as what you can do to decrease the frequency and the severity of your migraines. But one thing that I do want to say before we get into that is that this video is not meant to be a replacement for you to see your primary care physician or neurologist that can actually treat your migraine one-on-one. Instead, this is supposed to be an educational video for you to learn about what's going on inside your body and what you could do to further improve your health. Let's get right into it.